Pedro said, don't make it cemetery style. I decided to take him up on that. Thank you, Pedro. You don't see that in the cemetery. If you do, you don't go twice. Or else you come with a camera, one of the two. Thank you, ASCD. I want to shout out to Deb Brown. I want to shout out to Rob Webb, Rob Klaus, Carolyn Wheeler, so many people who year after year make this an extraordinary event for us, don't they? Yes. And special thanks to you, Deb Delisle, the new visionary leader of this organization, already taking it on to greater heights. If you haven't had the opportunity yet, as soon as you meet Deb, you'll be totally delised. Seems that there's a lot of change afoot in education. In America, for example, the US DOE finally scrapped No Child Left Untested. Unfortunately, they replaced it with 4 other words. ESSA is the acronym, and it still relies, it has heavy reliance on compliance. As you can see in this next video, that has limitations. Using compliance as a lever for meaningful change has its limitations. Can we see this video? Oh, I'm the one who's supposed to cue this, there. I was so happy with Aretha, I forgot about this part of the show.
Well, all right. My name is Deputy Kimball, and it's very good to meet you all. How are you all doing today?
Scared to death, right? Scared to death is how they're doing. You know, at the most that this sheriff is going to get from those students is compliance, but never commitment this way, right? For that, we would need engagement of the sort that this organization has espoused for more than a decade. Because if you think about it, as soon as that sheriff turns her back, what are they going to do? Flee. Not just run or walk, they're going to flee. If they haven't already opted out on their iPads and their iPods, like adults do texting, right? So for that kind of engagement, we need a whole new strategy. And if we don't meet the needs of our children, then they won't engage, will they? And in fact, if we don't meet them in an extended way, we'll have new challenges that we have to then address. For example, let's take an elementary school student who walks into school with dyslexia. If it's diagnosed and she's given the proper support quickly, probably won't have any problems. On the other hand, if that isn't the case, eventually she'll get negative feedback on her work and increasingly become more and more frustrated, and then she'll opt out or act out. And a lot of our students are doing this. I'm from a state where students are doing it left and right. In fact, parents are pulling out kids. They're pulling them out from the state tests right now because they feel it's either injurious or irrelevant to the students, their own children. So now this student that we're talking about now would have that happen most likely in what kind of a school? Probably a poor school, right? Because in that school they may not have the diagnostics or the personnel to find out what's going on and meet her needs. So her real problem is poverty, and she's being treated with it by punishment. Instead of treating the real underlying issues that are going on, she comes in poor, she goes out punished. And this is the conundrum we're finding and that Pedro is going to address in a few more minutes as to a way forward. I have another C I'd like to lay on you this morning, and that is that of complicity. Here under the shadow of the great Martin Luther King, I think it's appropriate to quote that he said he wasn't concerned about a few bad people in America, but that we not become a nation of onlookers. Onlookers due to willful blindness or due to just being totally unaware of what's going on. I'll give you an example of the latter. Pedro and I have been speaking a lot at our Excellence Through Equity forums throughout the country, 6 of which ASCD is going to be doing with us this spring. And at one of them, we were at a break, walking through the hotel lobby, this last one, and a woman spotted me, and she pulled herself away from her colleagues and ran over to me, and she said, "Alan, I owe you an apology." I said, "Have we met?" She said, "No, But I was in the back of the room, and I saw you and Pedro, and I decided you were going to be the boring one. Now, I didn't know if that was a premonition or a request. I didn't understand. She said, yes. So I walked out of the room when you got on, and I just poked my head in a few minutes later, and I saw everyone's dancing to Aretha. And then you've got a lesson spinning out of this, and it's interesting. And I stayed, and you weren't boring at all. Now she owes me an apology. So I decided, I didn't even share this with you, Pedro, but I've got a new moniker for us. It's Excellence Through Equity by Pedro the Dynamo and Alan, the not that boring one, too. Actually, I think she was quite courageous to have realized her own complicity and her own, biases and shared them with me. I also think that she had another unspoken question, which is, what's a white guy like you doing in a place like Equity? And for that, I'll start with the practical answer and then the personal. Practically speaking, and I say this to my white brothers and sisters in particular, the light-skinned among us, is that equity is the issue of our times. Whether you look at the Oscars in LA or the New York City Ballet, even dyed-in-the-wool traditional organizations are starting to sound the chord of diversity for their own economic survival, because they've seen the statistics. You look at Ferguson, Flint, Michigan, Baltimore, Bombay. I mean, all throughout the world, our children are experiencing great trials and challenges, death, due to the underlying issues of inequity, all for being born onto lonely islands of economic despair surrounded by vast oceans of wealth and prosperity. Take, for example, the fact that 80 people in the world have more wealth than 3.5 billion people, half the planet. And that's echoed in America, where the top 1% have more wealth than the bottom 95%. And of course, this shows up in our schools. No question, no wonder why last year was the first year that a majority of our children in school were poor. And we had a majority minority. So things are changing rapidly. What's the fastest growing segment of the American student population? Anybody know? Latinos? No. Homeless. For the last year that we could get the stats, it was up 8%. If you took that 1.258 million students and you put them all in one district, you'd have the largest district in America by far, topping New York's 1.1 million. But yet they're all over, and we don't even know they're there, do we? Much less have supports in place to make sure that they succeed. Now, it's true that it's hard to know sometimes. Johnny doesn't show up on day one and say, hey, I'm Johnny, I'm homeless. I know, I used to shake all the hands of the students coming into my class, different hand signs. One guy wouldn't even stick his hand out. So I pulled it back after a while. He said, why you do me like that? I said, why I do you like what? He said, why you pull your hand back like that, man? I said, Tony, I had it out for 2 months. You didn't want to shake it. Yeah, but I didn't think he was going to give up on me like that. Now, it's funny, but it's sad because it's true. It's the last thing he wants and the first thing he's always gotten, isn't it? Because one thing we know about school and our other institutions is that those who need us the most get us the least.